Welcome to this revision blast for AQA GCSE Geography. Today we are focusing on glacial landscapes, which is part of the physical landscapes of the UK unit and is paper 1. Remember, this is an optional topic, so not all of you will have studied glacial landscapes. We're going to start off this session with a round of altered vowels. So each of the key terms that you are going to be shown has had the vowels changed to an alternative. You need to work out what these key phrases are. Okay, our first one is on the screen already. So can you work out what this one is? Let's have a look. It is freeze-thaw weathering. So what happens here is water freezes in cracks, it expands and then melts. And when this happens over time and time again, the rocks will start to crack. Right, number 2. Okay, have we worked this one out? This is erosion. So when we're talking about erosion and glaciation, we're talking about two processes in particular. We're talking about abrasion and plucking. So abrasion is caused by ice and the material it's carrying moving over the valley floor, scraping and scratching the rocks. And plucking happens when meltwater under a glacier freezes and sticks the rock underneath, pulling them loose as the glacier moves. Right, this one hopefully is a bit easier. Let's reveal this one. It is simply movement. So when some glaciers move down the valleys by sliding on a layer of meltwater, others move much more slowly because they are frozen to the rock beneath. When glaciers slide downwards along a curved plane or surface, this is known as rotational slip, a type of movement there. Right, next one. So what do we think this key process here is? Okay, let's reveal. It is transportation. So as the glaciers carry on, glaciers carry rocks on, in or below the ice, and the rock has been eroded from the valley floor inside, and we call this rock sediment moraine. We're going to talk about that a bit more in a minute. And our last one is currently on the screen for you. Let's reveal. It is deposition. So glaciers deposit the material they're carrying when they melt, and with most deposition taking place at the front, which is also known as the snout of the glacier. When glaciers retreat, they leave behind jagged rock pieces known as till. And the meltwater rivers carry material away from the snout of the glacier, with the process of attrition making it smaller and rounder, and we call this material outwash. Okay, we're going to play a round of the big reveal. So you've got to work out what is hidden behind the question mark before all of the clues are revealed. Let's go. So number 1, I am home to an arete called Striding Edge. Number 2, one of my most famous mountains is a pyramidal peak called Helvellyn. Number 3, I was designated a national park in 1951. 4, I'm in the northwest of England. And number 5, I am famous for my mountains and lakes. Let's reveal. It is the Lake District. So some of you may have studied the Lake District as your named glaciated upland area. Right, let's do another one. Number 1, I'm the cause of many glacial landscapes. Number 2, I cause the wearing away of material. Number 3, I'm caused by rocks becoming embedded in the ice. Number 4, I deepen corries. And number 5, I'm not plucking. So it must be abrasion. And we've got one more. Number 1, I'm a depositional feature. Number 2, I can be seen in the glacial valleys of the Lake District. Number 3, the source of my material is freeze-thaw weathering. Number 4, I create a medial moraine where two glaciers merge. And number 5, I form along the edge of a glacier as it retreats. What am I? I'm a lateral moraine. Well done if you got that correct. So we now have 60 seconds to try to match key phrases to their definition. So you need to match the letters on the left with the numbers on the right. If you've got a pen and paper with you, that will be really handy right now. Off you go. Okay, so a lot to do there in 60 seconds. Did you manage to match them all up? Let's have a look. So we have A and 7 together. We've got Glacial Trough, which is a steep-sided, wide and flat-bottomed valley formed by abrasion. B4 is Hanging Valley, which is a small tributary valley found above the main glacial trough. C1 is truncated spurs formed when a glacier is unable to flow around existing interlocking spurs, so cuts straight through them. D3 is ribbon lakes, which are long, narrow lakes, often tens of metres deep. There are lots of those in the Lake District. E6 is corrie, large hollowed out depression found on the upper slopes of glaciated valleys. F5 is an arête, a knife edge ridge often found at the back of a corrie or separating two glaciated valleys, often extremely narrow. So striding edge was one of your clues for the big reveal, the first one, and it is one of those areas in the Lake District which is very difficult to walk on. It is extremely challenging, and it's one of those areas as well where many walkers over the years have lost their lives. G is erratic, so it goes with 8, a large boulder which is out of place, resting on a different type of rock. And H2 is drumlins, small egg-shaped hills about 10 metres high and several hundred metres long that are found in clusters. They are quite odd things to see. Okay, we're going to move on to a scrambled sentences activity. So on screen you have got 6 sentences. These show the process of freeze-thaw weathering, also known as frost shattering, taking place on rock surfaces above the surface of ice and at its margins. You've got to decide how the process takes place though, so you need to rearrange the sentences to explain the concept of frost shattering. We have, over time, large blocks of rock can be shattered apart by repeated cycles of this weathering process. Water seeps into the crack in a rock face. This may be water from summer rainfall or snowmelt. Water expands 10% when it turns to ice, putting pressure on the crack, prizing it apart and causing it to tear wider open. The evidence for freeze-thaw weathering is scree slopes and block fields. These are piles of rock debris that blanket large upland areas in the UK. During the next 24-hour cycle, the ice melts, sinks deeper into the cracks and then freezes again, and the temperature falls at night, causing the water to freeze. So what I would like you to do now is to pause the video. You need your pen and paper at the ready. You need to note down the correct order of these sentences. You can just write down the numbers rather than the whole sentences. If you haven't already paused the video, then please do that now because I'm about to reveal the correct order. Let's reveal. So we start off with water seeping into cracks in a rock face. This may be water from summer rainfall or snowmelt. The temperature falls at night, causing the water to freeze. Water expands 10% when it turns to ice, putting pressure on the crack, prizing it apart and causing it to tear wider open. During the next 24-hour cycle, the ice melts and sinks deeper into the crack and freezes again. Over time, large blocks of rock can be shattered apart by repeated cycles of this weathering process, and the evidence for freeze-thaw weathering is scree slopes and block fields. These are piles of rock debris that blanket large upland areas in the UK. So well done if you got those correct. We're now going to move on to a round of conundrums. So each letter of the key phrases have been rearranged, and the clue in this case is economic activities. So can you solve the conundrums? You will have 30 seconds for each one. Off you go. So did we manage to get this one correct? Okay, we have tourism. So tourism is really popular in glaciated upland areas. So those landscapes are popular with adventure tourists who want to hike, climb, do things like mountain biking, sometimes even skiing. So particularly in Scotland, if you've looked at some of the Scottish Highland areas for your case study, other tourists might want to visit just to enjoy the scenery because they are quite spectacular. Right, next one. What does Mr. Fagan stand for? It is farming. So the land in glaciated upland areas generally has quite poor soil, so it is mainly used for grazing. So you will see sheep everywhere, for example, but you'll also see quite a lot of cattle. In lowland areas, soils are a bit deeper as the material has been deposited, and that does make them suitable for growing crops and growing feed for animals. So when you have flat lowland areas that are covered with glacial till, they can be ideal for farming. But we also have to remember that lots of these areas, because they are upland, also are very wet and quite cold. So your farming methods up there have to adapt to suit that, which is why you do mainly see pastoral farming, and it is normally sheep grazing. Okay, the next one. Okay, let's have a look. It is quarrying. So the hard rock found in upland glaciated areas can be quarried to provide stone for building roads and for construction. The glacial till deposited in lowland areas may also be used as a source of sand for the construction industry. So if we think about some of these areas, the Yorkshire Dales, for example, has lots of limestone. That's a really important building material. Up in the Lake District, you've got lots of slate. Okay, next one. So we have forestry this time. So we have plantations of conifers that have been planted in many upland areas in England and Scotland, and these trees grow well on the acidic soils that are cut down after 20 to 30 years, and they will then be used as timber for all sorts of building projects. Right, we're going to move on to a 30-second challenge this time. So we've got a number of these. I think we may have 3 of these. Our first one is, why is it difficult to farm crops in glaciated upland areas? If you've got a pencil or pen next to you, make a few notes. You've got 30 seconds. If you need more time after 30 seconds, you can always pause. So, why is it difficult to farm crops in glaciated upland areas? Well, firstly, you've got steep slopes from ice erosion, so it's really difficult to use machinery. You've got limited fertility due to gradient and resistant underlying rock. There's not much infiltration, so for example, slate is impermeable there. You've got low temperatures at high altitude, so therefore you've got a short growing season. And you've also got heavy relief rainfall, so waterlogging and soil erosion is really common. Right, let's do another one. So this time our question is, what different land uses take place in the Scottish Highlands? If this isn't the case study that you have done, think about the land uses that take place in your case study and you will find that they are probably very similar. Okay, if you need a bit more time, then please pause it because we're about to reveal the answers. So the question was, what different land uses take place in the Scottish Highlands? And we have got animal grazing, so mainly sheep. It's introduced in the 1800s due to the demand for wool for the textiles industry, which would be the same for the Lake District. Also specialist meat, so venison, which is deer, and Highland cattle, even ostrich. So not so much seen in the Lake District, but definitely a part of the Scottish Highland heritage. And you've got commercial forestry, so fast growing pine and spruce, ideal for furniture making, construction and fuel. And again, that last answer there would be the same for your Lake District case study. Right, we've got one more to go of these. Our last 30-second challenge question is, why does quarrying take place in some glaciated upland areas? So if you need a bit more time, just pause the video. Our question was, why does quarrying take place in some glaciated upland areas? Let's have a look. So firstly, the upland areas have tough, resistant rocks, so slate and limestone, for example. We've already mentioned those. The lack of population means it is safer as explosives are used to shatter rocks into transportable pieces. There's less objection to the noise too. So if you're in some of those national parks in the north of England, the Yorkshire Dales is a really good example of this, you will often hear sirens, and the sirens will warn you that there is some dynamite being used, there is about to be a controlled explosion, and then a second siren will go to let you know that that process has happened and it is safe again. Slate, limestone and granite are all found in the areas and they all have a high economic value. Okay, we're going to move on to a connection wall activity here. So these are all linked to economic activities that take place in glaciated upland areas. On the screen you have 16 different key phrases. They are all linked to different economic activities that can be divided into 4. What we're going to do is we're going to help you out a little bit firstly, and we're going to get you to think about finding the 4 key phrases that are linked to farming. Okay, so what I would like you to do is pause the video, get your pen, get your piece of paper, and note down the 4 key phrases on the screen that are linked to farming. So if you haven't already done so, please pause the video and restart when you think you have got 4 that are linked to farming. Okay, let's reveal the answer. So farming, we've got upland areas mainly used for grazing. Lowland areas have a thick layer of glacial till which makes them fertile. Sheep can tolerate cold, wet, windy conditions, and grass is grown for winter feed, hay and silage. Okay, the next ones we're looking for are those that are linked to forestry. So we've got 12 left. 4 of these are linked to forestry. Can you identify them? So like before, pause the video, note down the 4 that are linked to forestry. Once you've got 4 down, then unpause and we will check whether you have got them correct. Okay, let's reveal the answers. So firstly, conifers are adapted to acidic soils pretty well. The trees are used in the construction industry and for making paper. You've got large plantations on steep slopes, and you will find them in northern England, Scotland and Wales in those upland areas. Right, we've got 8 left now. So these are going to be divided into 2 different economic activities. The first one that we would like you to look for are the ones that are related to quarrying. So again, pause if you need to. It should be a lot easier this time because obviously you've only got half of them left. So which of these are related to quarrying? Pause the video, restart when you are ready. Okay, let's have a look. So we've got sand for making cement and gravel for making concrete. We've got hard resistant rock used in the construction industry and for building roads, and limestone is used in the chemical industry. So we've got 4 left over. We've got the most important economic activity in many glaciated areas, mountain activity centres such as Aviemore in Scotland, national parks, e.g. the Lake District and Yorkshire Dales, in spectacular glacial scenery. So what's linking them? We've got these 4 here. What is the link? Hopefully quite easy. It is something we have talked about already. Just give you a couple of moments. Okay, let's reveal. It is, of course, tourism. Well done. So that case study alert reminds us that for our glaciated upland areas, you need to know a named example. So the next activity that we are going to look at focuses on the Isle of Arran because it is a popular case study at GCSE. However, if it's not the one you have done, lots of the things that come up in the next activity will be relevant to you anyway. So, for example, if you've done the Lake District, many of the things in this case study will be the same. It is an on balance. Tourism is a huge industry in these glaciated upland areas, but it does cause some issues as well as bringing in lots of benefits. So firstly, we want to think about the benefits of tourism to these places, to the Isle of Arran in particular, but you might also think about perhaps the Yorkshire Dales or the Lake District if that's the area that you have studied. So what benefits does tourism bring? So what we would like you to do is pause the video for a moment, note down 2 benefits, and then we will have a look at some drawbacks. So pause the video if you haven't done so already. Okay, hopefully you've got 2. Let's have a look at some benefits. So we're focusing on Arran in particular. So the jobs are created by new visitors attractions. So for example, like Ranzer's Whisky Visitor Centre. Arran relies on tourism for a large chunk of its income, so 200,000 visitors annually, which would be the same in the Lake District. So huge amounts of visitors coming in all sorts of visitor attractions in the Lake District as well. So, for example, the Beatrix Potter experience, if that was your case study. Okay, so we're now thinking about the drawbacks of tourism in the Isle of Arran. So again, pause the video. Once you have got a couple of drawbacks down, then restart and we'll compare notes. So what are the drawbacks of tourism on the Isle of Arran? Let's have a look. You've got footpath erosion at honeypot sites. So, for example, North Goatfell Ridge in Arran, right across the Lake District, you've got these everywhere. Lots of congestion on Arran's narrow single track roads. And again, this is the same in the Lake District up the mountain passes. It's huge amounts of congestion. And speaking of the Lake District, our last activity is a categorised activity. So again, although these are all specific for the Lake District, you can tweak them quite easily to your own case study. So for those of you that have done the Isle of Arran, you can still actually categorise these into social, economic and environmental. So we're going to give you a minute. Off you go. Right, let's have a look and see how well you've managed to pop these into their categories. So we're looking for social, economic and environmental impacts of tourism in the Lake District. So our social impacts are that 89% of visitors arrive by car, so parking and congestion issues occur right across those tiny little villages in the Lake District. And there are also massive issues around a lack of affordable housing. So 20% of all properties across the Lake District are actually second homes or rentals. And then in terms of economic impacts of tourism in the Lake District, thousands of local people work in shops, cafes, hotels, etc. So, for example, in places like Grasmere and Ambleside, which is really important. So it does generate lots of work in areas where there are not many other economic opportunities. But it is important to point out here that lots of those jobs are going to be seasonal and they're probably not going to be very well paid. Tourists spend around £1 billion annually in the Lake District, so huge numbers there. And new business like adventure tourism also provides jobs for locals. So you have got Go Ape, for example, in Grisdale Forest. There's all sorts of adventure tourism happening right across the Lake District. The Slate Mine at Honister, for example, has got some pretty scary new attractions that are worth having a look at. And in terms of environmental impacts, you've got honeypot sites like Scafell Pike and Helvellyn, which suffer litter, footpath erosion and damage to grass verges. You've also got pollution, so oil and fumes from vehicles, but also on boats, so for example on Lake Windermere, which all cause ecosystem damage. And you've got dogs disturbing sheep and cattle. So remember, we have said that right across these types of places you have sheep everywhere, so dogs off-lead disturb these animals, and obviously that is can be quite traumatic. It can also end up with livestock being harmed as well. Right, well done for getting to the end of the Glacial Landscapes Erosion Blast. We have covered a number of different activities there, looking at processes, but we've also looked at landforms and we've discussed the impact of tourism on these glaciated upland areas. So hopefully you are going to go into the physical landscapes of the UK part of paper 1 feeling much more confident. So it just leaves me here to wish you the very best of luck, and have a look at the other revision blast videos in the playlist. Good luck.